Then it's on to Len.
All right.
No, Len already.
No,
Yeah.
to start the program.
Right. Never mind.
Can you all hear me all right?
Yes.
I certainly can.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I'm using speakerphone. It'll be difficult. I mean, I will try to pause once in a while, but since I don't see anyone, it's hard for me to get a wave or anything. But do interrupt if you're having trouble hearing, and I'll hopefully pause long enough to hear your interruption. So our topic this time is, I think we just said, indigeneity. And so, I really appreciate so much of what people were saying, that it's been said that, we all come from tribes originally. All our origins are indigenous somewhere at some time. I mean, for most of us who descend from Europeans, that time may be a really, really long time ago, like, multiple millennia. So it's generally lost. That is, we don't know what it was. We don't know what our indigenous traditions were. We may not even, we probably have choices of which lineage you follow, where you come from. But I think it's really helpful to dive into that as a point of connection. I myself became fascinated with North American indigenous culture in my late teens and 20s. And I did some interesting things, like I ran off to try to help out during the occupation of Wounded Knee in 1973. I had the privilege of meeting with the Shoshone medicine man, Rolling Thunder. I became part of what was known as the Bear Tribe, a Chippewa man named Sun Bear had founded, where he was trying to bring indigenous teachings to mostly young white hippies. But all of those experiences were formative for me. So that's kind of my beginnings. So I wanted to start by talking about the etymology of the word indigenous, which basically translates as begotten within, or you could rephrase that as of or belonging to a place. And that belonging to a place is a very particular thing. And when we look at indigenous cultures that are still alive and intact, we see that connection to place is extremely intimate. The knowledge of plants, the knowledge of the animals, the awareness of the communities of those plants and animals, and how much their language and their traditions are rooted and belong to the patterns of the geography they're in. So I wanted to take a look real quickly, kind of the really short version of indigenous spirituality. And there are some qualities that are pretty universal to indigenous cultures. And one of those is the sense that everything is alive, and everything is sacred, and everything is related. And the point of everything being alive has to do with also the fact of being related to it. If everything is alive, then whatever you take to feed yourself, to house yourself, to clothe yourself or heal yourself, is you're taking something that's alive from its life in order to make it possible for you to live. And that sets up a relationship. The notion of everything being sacred is an understanding that everything has a presence and a power that's beyond the physical plane, that it has a spiritual as well as a physical existence, which, if you are in relationship with it, creates a necessity for a more, what I'm terming a prayerful communication. You could call it perhaps just simply a demanding relationship. As you know, anyone knows, if you're in relationship with someone, things come up, and you have obligations. And so when you think of things as everything being related, one of the things that crops up in indigenous languages all the time is they refer to key entities around them with kinship terms. So like it might be very common in one culture to say father, sun, grandmother, moon, mother, waters, or maybe referring to, like a lot of corn cultures refer to corn as our mothers because they're the ones that feed them, right? And another interesting one is that a number of cultures, both in the Americas and in Africa, refer to fire as grandfather, sun as father. That is the star that shines on us so close by, the sun, as father, and fire itself as grandfather. And it's interesting to me from that point of view of how we became who we are now, that we would refer to fire as grandfather. And then I came across an archaeological article about a cave in South Africa where they were able to find and date traces of fires that had been used to cook meat. And when they dated it, it was approximately 1 million years ago.
Oh.
1 million years ago, people using fire to cook meat. By our anthropological academia, they're not even people yet. So that gave me a good perspective on the idea of fire as grandfather and the role of that. And then the other one is simply, of course, out of all that, you could sort of sum it up and say humans are a part of and not separate from the rest of nature. We're in relationship with it as part of it. We are within that family of relationships. And often the shamanic point of view, or the spiritual point of view, if you want to call it that, within those cultures is that even though we are, like every other organism, a part of nature, we have unique capacities to manipulate life for our own benefit. You know, for example, to propagate crops, to change the landscape through fire or spreading of seeds, which was extremely common among the indigenous people of California. And because we have these capacities to manipulate, in order to maintain the balance in nature so that it continues to provide that life force that we are manipulating, we have certain agreements we have to make, we have to maintain with the holy, or with the spirits of the place, you could say. And those agreements are what is enacted or manifested in ritual and ceremony. That is what establishes the parameters of what our special relationship and obligation is to everything else in life. So I was going to suggest that we do a short reflection. If everyone has a means to write some notes for yourselves, I wanted to give you a couple minutes to just think about those three things, thinking about living in a place where everything is alive, everything is sacred, and everything is related, including to you, but also to each other, everything related in relationship. And just take a few moments and maybe jot down some reflections about that. And then I'd like to give you, let's call it 2 minutes to do that. And then if we could have, maybe a few people share some of their reflections for, call it 5 minutes after that. And then we'll move on.
And this is Adriana. Could you say the very last thing you said again? Something about that we are unique, but there's manipulation that gets involved, and I didn't get that. It seems important.
Oh yeah, the sense of humans being part of the whole rest, the whole rest of the living communities that they're in, but that we do have a unique position because we have the capacity to manipulate the force of life for our own use.
Thank you.
Would it be possible for everyone to mute yourself when you're not actually speaking? Thank you. Oh,
So if that hopefully is enough time for you to have written down a few things that are meaningful to you, I wanted to invite people to just share any piece of what you've written or all of what you've written for a few minutes.
And so everybody's on mute except for Len and I right now. So if you want to offer your thoughts, raise your hand. I see Michelle's got her hand up. Go ahead, Michelle.
One of the things that I wrote is, in a place where everything is alive, sacred, and related, we are always held in loving community by those things that give us life and contribute to our well-being. And we always have a chance to meet new potential allies and dance partners for co-creating beauty and joy.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Polly. Wait. You, okay. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I've always felt like we have a responsibility. I mean, I was taught this when I was a kid, that we have a responsibility to treat other living things as we would wish to be treated. And to accord them the same respect that we expect in return. I think the view that everything is alive is slightly different, and it just feels like it's a more sacred responsibility than just treating everybody the way we would want to be treated. Because if we are capable of manipulating life in all its forms, and we're eating and using a lot of other beings, then we have our responsibility is a lot deeper, greater, yeah. And I haven't put my head around all of that yet, but so that's it.
Someone else?
I'll go ahead. Yeah, for me, what Len, what struck me in what you shared was the fact that everything is alive, everything is sacred, everything is related. So that goes for everything in nature, including us and all that. The only difference.
Can you speak louder, La?
Okay, let's see. Is that better? Is that better if I bring the microphone? Is that better?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll speak louder. All right. So yeah, I was struck by this discontinuity between everything in nature, which we are part of, but everything else beside us in nature is totally sacred and related and in reciprocity with each other. And here we are as humans, because of our unique capacity to manipulate for our own ends, we have forgotten the basic law of nature, which is reciprocity. So that's what, and I'm as guilty as anyone else for that. I mean, I take from nature, I take from the goodness that nature provides. I don't think first of how can I reciprocate. This is a strange, this is not a kind of normal thinking. So, and this is normal thinking for indigeneity. So this is where what I'm getting from this is I really need to be more conscious of this concept of reciprocity, which is everywhere in nature and that we have forgotten. That's it for me.
Thank you.
I'd like to go.
Okay, go ahead, Adriana.
Hearing this that we were talking about activated in me a memory from a teacher that I had, Brew Joy, many, many years ago. But he talked about a triangle with spirit at the top, and then the masculine on down one leg and the feminine down the other. I'm not going to get this absolutely right because it's really been a long time, but the fact that life was kind of structured that way is what, in the coming together of those 3 points and the interaction, it was that created change, and that change is what allowed us to grow. That we're not static, and that we're not static because there's this dynamic of, well, mother, father, and child, I guess. And it just that was a very interesting idea to me because I somehow had a picture of the forces that demand that we change and adapt to whatever circumstances we are in. That we, like right now, what's happening in our world is that we're having to really change, and it's because of opposites that are working with each other, and somehow the idea that this is built into the system. I'm not talking about it from using the same terms as alive, sacred, and related, but it's the triad somehow that what allows us to grow and change and adapt. And that just sounds important to me personally, that I'm responsible for helping my world adapt to change. That's all.
I think because of time, we're going to need to move on, and I'm sorry if anyone else had something they'd like to share, and I'll just encourage people after the formal part of this is passed to stick around as long as it's available and keep sharing. I have one more thing before I want to let, I don't know whether Jody or Tatanka is going, Mary or Tatanka is going next, but I wanted one more thing before I let go here. I have had the privilege for the last 10 years of being a student of Martin Prechtel, who is a shaman in the Mayan tradition and comes from a long legacy of teachers who, his own teacher was very steeped in that tradition, and in turn, the teacher of that man was steeped in the tradition, so it goes way back. So we circulated a couple documents with the invitation to the meeting. One was an excerpt from Braiding Sweetgrass, and another was Martin's advice for restoring or revitalizing your indigenous soul. And this was something that he actually shared with my fellow students the year before I was able to join that group. I joined the group at the beginning of its second year. So the very beginning of that session, he shared this advice, and I was able to copy one of my fellow students' notes. So what you see is, from 11 years or so ago, and I think most of it is somewhat self-explanatory, but I wanted to just touch on a few things in that list of suggestions that he put out. The first one is learn about your family history back as many generations as possible, preferably at least 1,000 years. It's so interesting for most of us who are of primarily European descent to try to look back, because for most of us there are enormous voids in that history. And for many of us, we're very lucky if we can get back 500 years before we lose the thread. What's interesting is to realize, for example, I have, I guess I am 1/4 Irish, or is it 1/8? I've forgotten already. And I know exactly where the Irish came from. It was on my father's mother's side. She came from Ireland as a mail order bride, direct from Ireland to California in the 1800s. And, so I can say, oh, well, I have this Irish heritage, right? But when I begin to dig deeper into it, we think of the Irish, oh, that's Celtic. Okay. Well, but if you start looking at the Celtic cultures, they are Indo-European cultures that emigrated across Europe over the course of at least 1,500 years. And if you look at a map of the Roman Empire at about 100 AD, it shows the areas that they had drawn in, areas that were primarily the Germanic tribes, primarily the Slavs, and primarily the Celts. And there were Celts all over Europe, including in the Apennines of Italy and in Hungary, and up in southern Sweden, and of course the British Isles, we all know that, and north, what is now part of Spain and what is now part of France. And this was the world less than 2,000 years ago. So when we talk about where did we come from, we so often imagine it as, oh, a few hundred years back, or maybe 1,000 years back. If you can take the leap and go several thousand more, you almost always have to rely on your imagination to fill the void. But the more you find out, I'll say, the more amazing it is. So I'm just putting that out there. It's like, don't limit yourself when you're able to put a label on it. Move beyond the label. Then Alain made a reference to reciprocity, so I want to mention a couple of things. The gifts we can give to the rest of life are the things that are uniquely human. So our creativity, our speech, the way we dress, those are all things that are part of what we have in our resources to reciprocate with. It's said that the spirit world is fed by the beauty of our world. So create beauty. And one of the other things that's in this list is making shell beads. I have, it's become somewhat of a habit that I make beads from shells, and because of the teachings I've had, and making offerings of those beads is something that I always am able to do if I can't think of anything else, because they're made by my hands. And, they have found caves in Spain where they found over 100,000 shell beads, and they dated those as over 30,000 years old. So it kind of goes back a little ways with our ancestry. And the only other point on this list that I wanted to add to is about language, because he mentions, learn to swear as your ancestors did. Learn to swear in a foreign language. Somewhat humorous, but great advice. And learn a non-Indo-European language. So much of the way we think is absolutely structured by the language we use to think with. And I speak Spanish, not quite fluently, but well. And I found Spanish and English are extremely closely related compared to, you know, Tamazigh, which I've tried to learn a few words of, or Diné, which I've tried to learn a few words of, which is the language that Navajo and Apache people speak. And yet, even in Spanish, as closely related as it is, when I think in Spanish, I have a different perception than when I think in English. So I just want to say, don't underestimate the importance of language, because when we think, we are thinking in language. And so with that, I'm done, and I want to invite whoever's next to please take over.
Lynn, Carol has something she wants to say, I think. Carol, go ahead and unmute yourself. I can't unmute you here.
Unmute.
There we go. Well, I love everything that you said, and you may or may not agree, but I'll just speak for myself. I know that I have lived many lifetimes in many different cultural situations and different races and different countries. And so your idea that we're all profoundly related, I mean, there's besides our genealogy back in time, there's such a deep web of connectivity, to me anyway, that is so profound. And of course, all of our bodies came from all the elements of food, which came from being fertilized by all the animals and their poop and the sun and the rain. And, you know, we're part of all the elements that make up life. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in because there's multi-dimensional aspects of how we're connected.
Yes, thank you for that.
Jody, do you want me to go next? Or okay.
Yes. Then Mary will go next after you.
Okay. And you about 5 minutes. Okay. So this is so rich. I guess what I want to share is that I had the unbelievable gift in my life about 25 years ago after a divorce to I started sweating with Native people in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and these two teachers offered a mystery school, and I ended up spending the next 14 years of my life as a part of 6 mystery schools. The first one as a student and the next as apprentices, and 3 were in Sandpoint, Idaho, 2 were in Amarillo, Texas, and 1 in Sonoma, California. And the aliveness of all the 4 worlds I was able, because there were a few of us that moved up there and our entire lives were in ceremony. We had integration, but we were in constant ceremony with nature. And I needed that break from the human community in Silicon Valley. I really needed it. So I got to experience, I won't go into the stories, but I got to experience just in the protocol of the ceremony, say the sweat lodge, which is my favorite ceremony, in gathering rocks, you would always ask permission. Well, it took nearly a year for me to slow down enough to listen. And the first time a rock said no was so surprising to me, but then offered where I could go where all the cousins would be. And I heard the cousins. When we went out to gather blue sage in Eastern Washington over an entire week, with garbage bags full of sage, because some of us were in business with it and had many ceremonies and many giveaways to the community. And it was a particular type of time in the moon and looking for a particular, anyway, we had always asked the grandmother in the valley. It was just unending, no other people but us. And it occurred to me that they knew I was here, and instead of asking each one, they could just respond. And so I started drumming, and about an hour later, as far as you could see, parts of plants lit up in electric brew, some sprigs, some entire bushes, and I was bringing back, 3 bags to everyone's one. And it lasted 2.5 days. And I was just singing and crying, overwhelming. My name came, we could ask for a name, and we did honor Sun Bear's book in terms of the animal medicine wheels. And I had everyone receive their name within days and weeks, and it took me 9 months. But when I had 3 sweat lodges in a row where a buffalo came out of the rocks and just looked at me, and I looked in his eyes and I said, "That's my brother." And I went, "No, that's me." And I brought it to my teacher. "That's part of your name, but it's not complete. Look for something of movement, because buffalo sits in the Northeast." And then the next day, for 5 straight days, I would open the door at 6 in the morning, and this wind inside me and outside me would rush. And I'd walked at 6 in the morning through the snow and never woken an animal. And every morning they're waking up. And so my medicine name is Buffalo Waves in the Breeze. And it teaches me so much. And I was buffalo for 3 months until I was sun dancing, and a Lakota elder greeted me as Tatanka, and I said, "Yes, my name's Buffalo." He said, "I don't know anything about a buffalo. You are Tatanka." And every name carries a vibration. Every name carries a history. Every name carries portals to travel places. So in the course of that mystery school, we were learning clairvoyance, and we all experienced, because we worked thousands of hours over 14 years, we experienced dying in places. I would be the one when we would be out in the wilderness in Mexico, in Montana, and the teacher would say, "Okay, Tatanka, when were we here before? There's 17 of us." And this download would come, and then we'd put a timeline on it. And we were able to remember lifetimes all over that we shared on Turtle Island, in North Africa, in what is, now Scotland and Ireland. And most of them were in the last 20 or 30,000 years, but one of them was completely underwater, and that timeline was 1.5 million years ago. So having the experience, and this is what Jody and I have talked about, using Earth Matters. I realize that having the experience of the relationship and the sacredness of it and the aliveness of it is just a whole nother level from knowing it. And I just would wish that for everybody. And we have Earth Matters. So anyway, I would love to design with anybody that's interested. It would have to take some time to slow down, time to be able to listen. That the vibration of rocks means you really slow down. And so I guess that's what I want to say. And among the gifts, in addition to that beautiful, explanation of our creativity, is simply our sweat. I mean, being in a sweat lodge and giving of our sweat. And, our ancestors are always present. And to be in a ceremonial space where you hear ancestors and you see ancestors and you can share dreams with people about, and then you find you're in each other's dreams. It's just a magic that I would wish for every human. And the last thing I'll say is that it reframed my whole life, because the things I was told as my parents, as I would walk up the Corte Madera Creek and be among teepees and native people, and my parents would, teachers and parents would say, what a beautiful active imagination. And for most of my adult life, that's what I thought it was, until I realized, because it happened at places in the Sierras, it happened places in the San Joaquin Valley, where I was walking into some of my past lives. And it isn't limited here, because I've always felt at home anywhere on earth and nowhere on earth. And the answer to that was, it's another whole long story, but I came from the Pleiades. So I've had, in this time of the coronavirus, in order to really stay present, when I do my grounding, when I ground to the rock people, they're alive. When I ground to the plant people, they're alive. And the animals, the air, the water. And I've needed to reground beyond Earth to my star home as well at this time, because it's just been so intense, the potential despair that I feel. But I can get myself back within a breath or two or three. And I'm so grateful that I learned that with all of us and our native teachers. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you very much. So when I started, I think, thinking about this topic, I came across somehow the book Braiding Sweetgrass. And so that really opened up, has been like my spiritual book for the past few months. And starting my new work too, it's been very inspirational. So I wanted to include in it, if you have the chance to read that chapter, if you have the book, and honestly, listening to her read the book and the audiobook is just phenomenal. So I highly recommend that. But what I found is that I grew up in Wisconsin, so that is where Robin Weld Kimmerer is Potawatomi, but she actually grew up outside of her tribal lands. But I grew up in Wisconsin, and so like a lot of the words of the cities and things like that are very familiar to me. So when I was listening to her reading this passage in particular was so beautiful and sounds so somehow familiar to me. But what it brought up for me is a lot of grief about not really belonging anywhere. And I found a poem that I had even written probably 5 years ago or so, and I just want to share this. I actually wrote this when I moved from Milwaukee to Chicago, and then I've only lived here for just about 2 years now. So I've really not in ancestral lands here. So this is a poem I wrote, and I wanted to show the picture too. So it's core roots. A plant won't usually go ahead and uproot itself, but I did. Some of my core roots ripped out in the process. I hear that in the right conditions, they will grow back, somehow change. The roots at the periphery work to stabilize the me I am becoming. God-centered life energy, sap, continually flows into new growth. Transplant life, different life. Rooted in fresh soil in an unfamiliar home, spectacular view, the horizon stretches out far and wide. It takes time to settle in.
I have one comment on that,
Mm-hmm.
which is just to say that we all have Akashic records, and the story of our soul's journey through all of this is never lost. It is within you.
It is within. Yeah. But I guess I'm still in the point in my life of trying to make things something else than what they are. Trying to accept what is. And I mean, it so brings up questions like, how can I can be indigenous to Earth? How do I connect to a new land and a new geography? How can I ever be authentic if I only know the past 200 years of my origins. And I can say, you know, yeah, I have, you know, so much Irish, so much German, so much, you know, so I can go back into what heritages I am. But then how do I commune with the place where I live, and how do I become that place? And
We're going to have time in breakouts to explore it. So I'm going to move it on to Jody now so that we can honor our time. Thank you.
anyway, so those are my questions.
I too, when we were talking about indigeneity, this is a major big topic that we probably are just touching on tonight. And I also went back, and I was the most impressed last year by reading the Robin Wall Kimmerer's Braiding Sweetgrass. It actually saved my life on some levels, because I really have to say that it's one of those books that continually connects you with indigenous wisdom in a very kind and generous way. She's not making anybody wrong, or there's nothing, but the history and the story she tells are really in terms with plants in particular. And it's just a really gentle and lovely reminder of what it is to be indigenous in so many different ways. So she doesn't just attack it in sense of place or sense of plants, a sense of being, yes, and being with things and honoring life and honoring all of life as we've talked about tonight. And some of the things that I know I can't even pass on by is without her whole explanation of the children learning the Thanksgiving address, and about how when they go to school in indigenous schools, they thank everything, every single being and every single rock and the mountains and the trees and the flowers and the, you know, every single thing. And it goes on for hours. And she comments about how we non-indigenous people, or I would just say our American soul, you know, gets kind of bored after about 5 or 10 minutes. We're going like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. They're going on and on. It could last 45, an hour, could go. They're thinking absolutely everything. And it's so precious to the thought of, you know, if we could even just spend a minute or two of our day, every morning, and thank whatever that is that presents itself to us, that it's so magnificent. It's so, you know, it's the magical part of the mystery of life that says, wow, I gotta thank that, because I didn't see it otherwise. So there's this whole piece about the Thanksgiving address that I just was wanting to just like say, yes, read that part of the book if you have a chance to do it. And the other part was when that just goes right in there, is that everything is this gift. Everything that nature provides is the most beautiful gift for us humans. And if we could just, you know, think of everything as a gift. This is this gift economy that Derek always talks about, that her way of speaking about it is so precious, because it's like, you wouldn't, if somebody gives you a gift of this beautiful blooming flower, this beautiful whatever that's in nature, and it's this gift of the day, and this magic of the day, and the chanterelles for me maybe one morning, but it's just that you get this position. You can't possibly, if somebody's going to give you a gift, your relationship is so changed. It's just a different way of being, because you would never, ever, you know, mistreat your gift, or, you know, or not love what has been given to you so lovingly. And so it has this, this is a very just gentle and gorgeously written book, and spoken, I guess, too, for some, that can really kind of gently introduce these indigenous ways of being with things, and that everything is a gift, and that everything is sacred. And it's just the most glorious book. I just, you know, I probably said more than I should about it, but this is something that I feel like just shifted me in such a way that I really got indigenous, like seriously, like I get it. And so the question that I wanted to give us before we do in our breakout, what practice or notion of indigenous culture, whatever that would be, would you actually aspire to or adopt in your new way of being during this COVID? Because this is a chance we have to sort of like be differently, or act differently, or see things differently, and be present to things that we may not already be present to. So that was kind of my question, sort of for our little Get ready, guys. It's going to be like a 5-minute breakout. So if you want to take 5 minutes to just sort of be quiet and write what you think that might be, if there is a practice or a notion of indigenous cultures that you may have gleaned from tonight's very short meeting that you would maybe aspire to or adopt and adapt in a new way of being for yourself. So I'll leave it there. I've spoken.
Did I hear correctly that you want to go into breakout rooms now?
Or we can do it just like Len suggested, just one, take 5 minutes to write down a few things on a pad. But yes, it'd be nice to go back in breakouts, but I don't want to. Is it possible for 5 minutes?
Yes.
6 minutes? Okay, please do. Thank you.
And
Whatever way.
Are you putting break? Oh, you are.
So we will have 5 minutes total for that the number of us in the breakout will have.
Yes, believe it or
Okay.
not. 6
Okay.
is okay too. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to mine.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
who would you like to join?
Who are you talking to?
You. Who would you like to join? Lynn, Adriana, Alan, Michelle. That's one room.
Len.
You want to join that one?
If I at all possibly can. I get up every morning and I greet the sun as Father, and even when I can't see him, I say, it's good to see the light of your face, Father, because the clouds, of course, are lit up. And sometimes I can see his face, and I say, it's good to see your face. Thank you for returning to us. I often make offerings of shell beads in places that I go. So, for example, here where I'm camped is a very precious place to me, and I leave beads here as an offering for what I receive. And then, the rest is I'm just learning as I go. So, but those are some things that I do to try to incorporate some indigeneity into my life.
I can go. I read Braiding Sweetgrass a couple of years ago, and it is transformative. I just can't say enough good things about it. But one of the practices that's described in there is she talks about the honorable harvest and that needing to ask permission and really listen. And I've been really focusing locally on gathering wild foods and being very careful to always make sure that I am practicing honorable harvest. And there are a lot of other constraints around that I won't get into, but and that it just feels, it makes it such a beautiful ceremony. Just to go out and pick some wild greens is like lights up my whole day. The other piece of another thing that she talks about is learning to recognize the species that you encounter and to greet them by name. And that's an interesting mishmash for me, because because I've trained as a scientist and I love learning scientific names of things. So I've got that. But then I'm also trying to cobble together a little bit of a vocabulary of what were the local names for things. And most of those are lost because the Awaswas language was just devastated through the mission period here. So I have, you know, the Mutsun name for hummingbirds is Humunya, and I learned a little song for hummingbirds, so I always try to at least sing the bar of that I can remember whenever I see a hummingbird.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
I'll go next. Let's see, am I muted? No. Yeah, this question brings up a lot of feelings for me, because I'm realizing that in my relationship with nature, I tend to automatically treat nature as a thing, you know. I was pulling grass, I was pulling, you know, the last couple of days I was pulling weeds because everything is growing up like crazy right now. But I realized I was not really greeting those weeds like, you know, sister and brother, whatever. I was treating them like waste, you know? And so my God, there were so many of them and so many different kinds that I don't even know the name of it. And I realized that, you know, sometimes I ask my wife, what's the name of this plant? What's the name of that plant? She seems to know them. I cannot even remember the name of people, you know? How do I remember the name of plants? So memory is not serving me well for that, but I realized the insult that it is, you know, to treat things like this. Like, if you don't know the name of something, then it's become a thing. So I'm struggling with that. So I'm going to make an effort to, even if I don't remember the names, to say something personal in my relationship to everything around me. And aware of the challenge that it is for me to do that. Over.
So what comes to mind for me based on your share, Alon, is I listened recently to an interview with Robin Wall Kimmerer, and in that interview she said, you know, we have a name for he, she, and if it's not a he or a she, it's an it. And she says we need another word for that takes the place of it, that makes it sound like relatives. And so she said, what about if we use the word ki for a single, like a tree, you know, ki is beautiful today, and then kin for multiple. And so, you know, the kin of geese are flying south for the winter or whatever, you know. So it's a way to make it, again, language is very important. And if we give it that special word, that special meaning, to say this is not an object, this is a subject. And if we say it, that makes it an object. And if we say ki or kin, that can make it or subjects or subject. So I'll stop with that.
Okay. Well, am I muted? No?
Yeah, no, you're not muted. We hear you.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, I have to start out by saying that I don't think I have ever given any thought to actual thought to the kind of things that we're talking about right now, about being so intimately connected to my roots, to my history, to my background. I know about it in terms of, well, my background's Jewish as opposed to being Christian. I have recollections of my hearing about my parents and my grandparents who were immigrants from Eastern Europe and then from England. But I don't, and I can feel a wave of feeling that kind of rolls toward me when I get into a situation in the native country of the Southwest and the dwellings of the Anasazi And so on that, I'm really attracted to, but not in any specific way. So I think I have a lot of investigating to do, and a lot of practice in noticing things that I never would have thought to notice before. I know I have there's an appeal, so there's definitely some connection, but it's very much still on the surface. So I'll stop with that and express appreciation for having this topic be brought to me. And the other thing is, I cannot even find the email notes that were sent to me for this meeting. So if there's someone who would be willing to forward them to me again, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Oh, and well, this is for later. That's all.
So I think this has always been, from as far back as I can remember, really important to be in nature and to feel really connected to the sky, and it continues to this day. I really treasure that time in the twilight as it's about to get dark to go out and be quiet in nature. And I do, when I come across a creature, I've seen so many amazing creatures doing this. It brings me such joy. And I don't know, like ritual ceremony, I feel like I'm trying to stay in the present moment and stay connected when I'm doing this. And then again, when I actually call the ancestors and the descendants, there is a strong element of connection. I actually, I go to my spot, I go to my tree, I sit there, I call in the ancestors, I respect the descendants' presence, and I feel so grateful, in that my upbringing was Catholicism, Catholic, to be able to have found what works for me, within the last 20 years, maybe. What a gift. And so helpful in these times. Catholicism never gave me that. I did like the ritual, and I missed the ritual of it. So the candle lighting, the bell, the quiet prayer is still, I can incorporate what I've learned in my childhood, formal structure, institutional religion, and I still try to blend those together. Thanks.
Okay, I will leave, and that will give you, I think, 1 minute to close up and wrap up here with the rest of you. And I'll let everybody else know that they're going to leave too. So hang tight. You've got 1 more minute after I leave.
You mean leave the
500 pages into 13 segments with all the, anyway.
Wow.
So you took it on yourself to leave, huh? Or did I join you?
Well, you know what? We finished, and I said, did we do that in 5 minutes? Everybody said no, and then they said, well, let's go back. And I said, no, I think we get asked back. And then I didn't even notice that you could go back.
I think I gave everybody else 1 minute to.
Yeah, give them 1 minute, because it's been a long time.
I still see a leave meeting down on the bottom. What happens if I click on that?
No, you don't want to leave you don't want to leave the meeting.
No, that will
That's
take
the whole big
forever.
meeting? Okay.
That's the whole thing.
So now we're on the minute countdown. We got 45 seconds to go, and then we'll be back.
Yeah, that's what usually happens in other Zooms. I didn't even realize we could volunteer. So we came back and commandeered the whole big.
I'm not sure you did. I might have just joined you. I don't know.
Yeah, you joined.
But anyway, it'll all be fine in another 28 seconds.
Okay. Look how responsible you are. Unbelievable. That was a A great picture, Alex, of you walking into the rock shop and them all clamoring for your attention.
Shared
Okay, here comes everybody.
All right. Anyway.
That was way cool.
Hello. Derek, you're brilliant. Woo, you're brilliant, Derek. Thank you. Holy cow. Anybody want
No
to just
kidding.
bursting in the scene? Anybody bursting?
Oh,
and
I
just-
miss you guys.
We're ready to just close. I
And
don't
so
wanna-
Lynn, since you can't see, everybody's back in the room now.
Okay.
We're back, Lynn.
Okay. Well, I was just finishing saying something, and I guess I'll say it for the whole group if that's okay.
Please.
Which is that there are many things that were said that made me think of this idea of shared stories, that in Indigenous communities, there are shared stories about the place you're in and about your primary relationships of that place, your major food sources. You have, whenever you go into an Indigenous culture, they always have stories that feature their primary sources of food, whether those are animals or plants. The weather phenomena that are characteristic of their area, the major plant communities of their area, those things feature, and they become a kind of an encyclopedia of where you live. And they may be mythological in scope, but they are about where you are. And we have among ourselves, as people who have been with Pachamama Alliance a while, we all have some shared stories, and we also develop them through shared experiences, and that those shared stories are critical. They may not, pass your personal assessment as being an Indigenous thing, but that factor of having shared stories, a shared understanding, a shared vision is something that I think is an aspect of indigeneity that we should give, positive regard in our own lives.
That's beautiful. And I'm going to make one comment on that. And I just thought we could do this with our local Pachamama group. Every ceremony, every time we were together in our mystery school, there were songs that came out of it. And we created a shield for every single time we were together that everybody could put in key things. And it's like a community memory of what happened. You know what I mean? It was a shield with the picture of the key experiences of people all together. And it was either on a deer skin or an elk skin or something, or it was like a huge medicine wheel, and you could choose to put it where on the wheel that you felt it belonged, which direction and which energy. We could do that as part of our practice of our shared stories. The memory, the essence of that story or that experience that we shared together as a picture on a shield or on a medicine wheel.
I'll even go farther and say you can all collage it at home.
There we go.
Find some great images that really express what you're feeling is the most important part. What you're feeling going through this disruption and what you're feeling about cultivating a different level of consciousness. What does that feel like? And what are the changes that we want to make as we're creating some sort of innovative and extraordinary picture for the well-being of all of life and certainly all of the global life of people all over the world. So I'm obviously a collage slut, so I'm going to just speak to that. I'm doing it in a book myself, and it's just really been phenomenally refreshing and relieving, and whatever that is. If I have stress, I go in there and cut a few pictures out of this or that. Or my favorite one, of course, which I just was talking with Ava about, is about something we should have a corporate death penalty. It was from a Yes magazine, like 2 years or 3 years ago, and I thought, oh my God, I gotta put this in my book. But meanwhile, I had to send it to some friends as well. But I'm just saying that's a really good way to release and relieve, and it's similar to creating a shield. It'd be your own indigenous shield.
That's a beautiful idea. And if you're more oral or you know, verbal, you respond to sound, you know, you can record yourself just letting loose. I mean, with whatever, it could be just sounds, because I mean, we learned about 40 indigenous songs from all different tribes on Turtle Island, never written, right?
I know.
It was all oral, and you learn them that way. And then, you know, I experienced what it was like. I used to hear, you know, and it's like gibberish to me, you know. But after the feeling of what you're feeling is expressed in a song, it's yours. It's your voice. It's your collective voice. So anyway, we could welcome poems, what you talked about, Jody, anything audio, you know, about the feelings of what we're going through as Pacha people. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I want to say one thing before I forget, because it's important. I had a chance, and a very beautiful chance, to be on conversation at the Stewardship Council with Lynn and Bill Twist and Archon and all these wonderful things that are happening in the Pachamama world. And one of the things that they were talking about is they're going to have an Earth Day, an entire day. So I want you to put it aside on April 22nd. They're going to have an entire day, sorry, Polly, Zoom calls of the most extraordinary thinkers and people of considerable, you know, the usual Bill McGibb, and maybe then a lot of people that you can consider that you know, and there'll be people you won't know, but they're planning to send out you know, mark that date. So they're going to send out some information.
Wednesday, I think.
That. Yeah, I know it's April 22nd. It'll be,
yeah.
There's also something else. They may actually also be sending some other things out besides the Monday calls, because they're saying that the people are signing up tremendously for all the game changer initiatives. There's people from like thousands from around the world are signing up. So this is all good. So the programs are keeping up really, really well. The staff is told they're obviously going by a slim, keeping everything alive. The staff has decided that they will go on half salary or less, and are keeping everything that they're doing alive that Pachamama knows and loves. And I just wanted to let you know, if you in any way feel like you want to send them a few bucks here or then, whether it's 10 or 15 bucks, doesn't matter. Everything will be really appreciated for this time while they're trying to figure out what to do as they keep their offices totally open and ready for this incredible shift in consciousness that they've been standing for so long, and so have we. So if you want to join them, there's been some pretty magical things happening as well. But I think the reality is we need to also be reciprocal, Ella, for what's going on, and how can we support Pachamama, the Alliance in San Francisco, and the people who are still holding, you know, forth for this just and sustainable human presence on this. You know, here we are. So
we have to create a stockpile.
Yeah, there you go. I think somebody called it a war chest.
Ready.
Something. This is the new war. This is a different kind of war, but we're on some other trajectory.
And
but I mean, she's really into aligning with what you're in love with and not with what you're fearful about, of course. You know, so it's kind of like the indigenous. They would be aligning with what they love, and they would be responding to that love and protecting it and doing everything possible to make sure that that is alive and well and continues for all of us.
Yeah, and this is the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, so particularly important.
Yeah, big day.
And Van Jones, they have a lot of great people. Yeah, so it should be on all our calendars. Thank you, Jody.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. And now we're going to close with Sacred Space. If you can hang out for 2 more sex guys. And I have a poem that you may have already heard.
Jody, I would just say that before you finish up, these glasses were left at my house when we had a meeting last month.
Are those yours, Cheryl?
Cheryl, do they look like yours?
Okay.
Oh, Marcia's saying.
Marcia?
Cool.
Okay, so is there someone that can take them home? But we're not in my house. Never mind. Now we know that, Marcia, these are yours, and somehow we'll get them back to you.
That's great. That's great. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Anything else anybody needs us to announce? Because we didn't really do that. And we're just taking 2 seconds to do that if you have something.
I just wanted to announce that once again on Friday at 7 o'clock with Danny Sheehan, he's going to be updating some amazing things with the Lakota people, also with the overstep of Trump on the signing statement after the 2.2 trillion, a potential lawsuit against Trump personally, and the Green New Deal, the California Green New Deal, and the need for a new spiritual perspective to make this all happen. So, and I'm hopeful still that this will be an official part of the Pachamama program too, which we started with Bill and Lynn and Danny and Sarah.
How to register for Friday night?
You don't need to register. You show up, and you will have an email tonight that came in today with a
I
link.
already got it, so it's out. I got the email right before the meeting.
Yeah,
And that has an address to log on.
it just has a link, and then it also has telephone numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, and we don't need a password yet.
Okay.
We've set up.
Great.
And we can invite other people to that, right?
Yes, you
Forward
can,
it on?
because we want it to multiply. We've had over 100 each time. I would really love to have 200 this time. We can fit 300 on our Zoom thing as it is before we have to expand it.
It's a significant update.
Yeah, it's an amazing update you're going to hear. It's because things are changing so fast.
And Tatanka, do check, because Zoom just put a lot of people on password requirements without the ability to turn it off.
Yeah, this is my Zoom, and I don't need a password yet.
Good.
So, yeah.
Well, it's also Save Earth Day for your friends too. If anybody wants to join that, that will also be available. And you'll get an email about that from Pachamama itself. So stay tuned for that.
And I also want to do a plug for Lynn's every Wednesday for the Soul of Money in Pachamama and all the stuff that's happening this week starting tomorrow. So
yeah, the Monday calls with Charles Eisenstadt is tomorrow. And you can go online or go on .org and get signed up. Yep. So we're going to close tonight with
Michelle is raising her hand.
Oh, okay. So, I'm sorry. Michelle did put a chat thing in the chat room.
Yeah. So I just wanted to let you know that, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we've been having these discussions in difficult times is the title for Nova Sutras. There's one tomorrow at 5:30 and Tuesday at 1. So you're all welcome to come to that, and just go to novasutras.org/events and you can register for that. I'll also be offering a waning moon meditation on Tuesday the 14th at 3:30, and a beginning of Earth Week gathering on April 18th, that's Saturday at 11. And there's, of course, lots of things all over the world that are being moved online for Earth Day. So
stay healthy, stay online. Don't desert it yet, and have fun. So go ahead. We're going to have Tatanka is going to do Sacred Space, and I have the poem called Lockdown by the Reverend, and we'll close after that. You can speak and stay on till 8:30. I think Derek has said he will stay on.
Do you want to read your poem first? Or do you want me to close?
I could. I don't care which way. We didn't get to that place in our discussion.
Okay, go ahead. Read it.
Okay.
Read it.
Okay, this is by a Reverend Richard Hendrick called Lockdown. Yes, there is fear. Yes, there is isolation. Yes, there is panic buying. And yes, there is sickness. And yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, after so many years of noise, you can actually hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and gray and clear. They say that in the streets of Assisi, people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy spreading flyers with her number throughout the neighborhood so the elders may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, museums, and mosques and temples are preparing to welcome and shelter the homeless, the sick, and the weary. Oh, and I didn't do the rest, did I? No? Oh, yeah. All over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are locking into their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are, to how little control we really have, and to what really matters, to love. So we pray and we remember that yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate. And yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic buying, but doesn't necessarily have to have meanness with it. And yes, there is sickness, but there doesn't have to be disease of the soul. Sorry, I can hardly read. Yes, there is even death, but there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as you know how to live now. Today, breathe. Listen. Behind the factory noises of your panic, the birds are singing again. The sky is clearing. Spring is coming, and we are always encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing. Sing. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Okay, can we all close our eyes and take some breaths? Let's take 3 nice, slow, easy breaths. And feel the gratitude for our breath and the intention of the mission of Pachamama that we protect and restore the breath of the Amazon, the lungs of our Mother Earth, our planet. So in the South, we are grateful to the South people, to our ancestors, to the waters, to the plants, to our emotions, and to the new story we are birthing. We give thanks to the West, to the minerals. May they stay in the ground. May our new currency of exchange be the minerals kept in the ground, not sold on earth. And the health of the soils and of our human community, and of the regeneration, the protection of our animal species. So we give thanks to the West, the place of death and change, and the place of Mother Earth. Thank you for being with us. We go to the North, of the air, the place of the animals, the place of our mind, our intuitive nature, and the wisdom that we welcome from within and from our Pachamama community and from nature itself. We are open. We continue to be open. As we go to the east, where we started when Jody opened this, we welcome ourselves in our own human community. We've been to the plant, the mineral, and the animal communities. We are a part of the human world of Grandmother Earth. And that sun that comes from the east, and that determination that we have, that we can determine our lives with spirit, with love, with light. We're grateful for all our ancestors. We're grateful that we are part of a community that is creating a world in which we can live. Environmentally sustainable, socially just, spiritually fulfilling human presence on our planet Earth. Aho.
Aho.
Oh.
And now the meeting is over, and as Len said, we're invited anybody who wants to stay for the next Derek, how long are we here?
Oh, and until we're done.
Hmm.
Yeah, no limit. It's,
Yeah.
you can go for
I think
24 hours on this plan. So
Okay.
yeah,
I
we'll stay.
think we were leaving with a question that some of us got together earlier and discussed the whole group. And it was really, what is the breakthrough through that of this breakdown? And how do we actually live differently now? And sort of like to give that some really incredible thought. I think about how are we going to transform ourselves now that we're in this situation? And we've had obviously the indigenous wisdom that we're starting to glean a little bit, and there's so much more than we can do to go back and to learn more from the indigenous cultures that have been living for centuries with this earth the way it is. But what are we actually, as a community of Pachamama or ourselves individually, what is the breakthrough that we're going to be able to talk about at our next meeting through this breakdown? So I'm going to leave that question really open, or we can continue the conversation until Derek decides to close the room. But thank you for coming, guys. Thank you so much. You guys are so patient. My God. So thank you. And I have spoken. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank everyone too. This is, I'm doing this on a telephone, and I'm in a beautiful place where the sun has set, and my friends are now gathered around a fire. So I'm going to depart, but I wanted to just say I was really touched by everyone, what you had to say, and I so value all that you all bring to this group and how it spreads, ripples out from here in the other work that you do in your lives. And so I feel very honored and privileged to be part of this group, and look forward to connecting with you in real space sometime, hopefully in the not too distant future. And in the meantime, let's keep communicating by whatever means we have access to. So thank you.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Len. Thanks for your leadership. And
Thanks for
your clarity.
tonight.
And my word, breaking away from that amazing environment. Oh, bless you.
I would like to thank especially for Len and Jody and Tatanka and Mary and who else. This meeting was just extraordinary. I mean, I've had so many misconception about Zoom, and I realized that we had an amazing meeting tonight, and I want to thank everyone and those who put it together. I mean, I'm so impressed by this community.
Special thanks to Derek, who
Yes.
tells us.
Yes.
Bless you.
Woo! Big round of applause for Derek.
Derek.
Wow.
Hey.
Thank you.
Techno genius.
So the daily conversations we've been having, we like to close with holding hands. So putting hands up in the window. Yeah, there we go.
There we go. We're holding
See everybody. Thank you so much.
Now, the way I'm situated, Akash and Ava are up in the left-hand corner, and my body wants to get up and turn left and go over and give you guys a big hug. And I said, no, you can't do that. They're not here.
Yeah.
virtual hugs. Virtual
Well,
hugs.
you know what? I have something to say about that. Virtual can be very powerful. In the 20 count on the medicine wheel, the first round is, Father, Son, Mother Earth, plant people, animal people. The second round, after you get to 10, from 11 to 20. So 11 is the higher aspect of the 1. 12 is the higher aspect of the 2. And it's really the spirit of the thing. And that's what, I don't underestimate the power of virtual. I am also so, I am also conflicted because I know the manipulation that media does all the time, and that entrains us to separate from ourselves. But we don't have to collaborate with that. Our intention is we are coming together virtually, and the spirit of who we are is powerful.
Hugs. Hugs, hugs.
You can turn up to the corner and give a big hug, and they'll feel it, Adriana.
Good night, you guys. Sleep well.
Mwah.
Good night. Bless you, bless you.
Bless you. Be
Right.
safe.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, be safe.
happy.
Such a treat to have Eva and Akos also
Yes.
with us
That
tonight.
wonderful.
Did you guys, well, hold on a minute. Did you know about or mention the concert with Andreas Bocelli? It's on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
YouTube, and it is absolutely phenomenal. And if you have a chance, see if you can find it.
Can you send a link?
Yeah, I'm gonna look for a link to send.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
No, it just hit me that Mill Valley took off after the Italians, right? So every night at 8 o'clock in Mill Valley, they howl. And people will put their cell phones up to people all around the country to hear Mill Valley howling after the Italians. There's no reason why we can't do that.
We're doing it up here in the San Lorenzo Valley.
Yeah, they
I mean,
just did it half an hour ago
but I mean,
here.
all of us doing it at the same time some night together, our local Pacha group.
Yeah.
We can do it right now.
Yes.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thanks, guys. Bless you, bless you.
Yeah, bless you. My dogs are about to howl with you.
Yay.
With the coyotes. Good night.
Love you.
Love you.
Test positive, stay positive, test negative, and believe
Be
you're
safe.
a carrier. Act like you're a carrier. Yes. What do you think? Thanks.
It's hard to leave each other, huh?
Good night. dear.
Yeah.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Oh, we're down to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How are you two?
Good.
Good.
You're well.
Yay.
How are you, Jackie?
I'm hanging in there. It's a bit of a roller coaster,
Yeah.
but for the most part, I'm good. I continue to be good.
So you are running around with N95 mask?
I do have my N95 mask, but it's really hard to wear a mask when you're talking to elders.
Yes.
Yes.
Very
It's
hard
even
to
hard
do that.
shopping with N95.
Yeah, so I have to be honest, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm keeping my distance. I'm talking loud.
Yes.
And I'm bringing my own chair, so I'm not touching anything of theirs, or hopefully not touching anything of mine. And yeah, it's working okay. It's working okay. That part, we're making it work. So for that, it's nice. But
good.
Yeah, but it's a tricky time we're living in.
Good to see you.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we have
Good to
my
see you.
daughter and her husband, and she's giving birth in the beginning of June, and they're living in East Palo Alto with his Mexican family, some of whom are not observing social distancing, and they want out. So they're going to be moving up with us, and we have to observe some sort of social distancing. They came up to scout out the downstairs. We'll have the upstairs, and I realized I got to bring out the old barbecue to put it outside so we can, we can do some cooking with some distance out there, because they're not going to be sharing our kitchen. So,
and to talk, I just want to say, I do think language is very important, and physical distancing. Okay, I get that, but we need to be socially closer than we've ever been before.
Did I step out social?
I want to start getting,
Exactly, that's the
physical
point of
distancing. Yes.
I
Let's
agree.
not keep saying social
Yes.
distancing. That's
Physical distancing.
counterproductive.
Thank you.
Posh, did you say something? I missed it.
Oh, he said the same thing.
That this was the point of this virus. We need to figure out how we can be closer to each other in this modern world.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I echo the sentiment that I've talked bad about technology and social media forever, and yet that seems to be our saving grace right now, is the technology like Zoom, you know, to pull people together. So,
Exactly.
you know, slap my hand. Okay.
Well, but it kind of reminds
And
you.
not just for work purposes.
It kind of reminds you of the story of the eagle and the condor, right? So that we're going to keep hang on to the good from where we're at. From the ego, right? Hang on to to technology and to things that work well, and let go of the toxic. Wow, so toxic. The way we do economy and the power elite. Oh boy, I really think we need to start focusing on. That's what's been coming up for me just recently. Is I've been kind of focusing on my fellows, you know, to encourage listening to different things and not mainstream media for your information, but other trusted sources. But now it's like, just like last couple of days, I've been thinking we need to focus on bringing that powerful elite. I don't think, actually it's Mickey Huff. You might be familiar with him, the Project Censored. And so I was just reading the intro to the book too, and that was interesting because they were saying the same thing, like we need to bring the power elite to us, right? To have them. And it's very interesting, like a few people are, you know, leaders are ill and in intensive care. And it's like such a good reminder to them, you are with us.
You know what I forgot in that line, what I forgot to mention, have you seen the letter that Sunrise and a dozen other young people did to Joe Biden with everything?
Yes, they're making, yes. Well, I didn't see it.
It's powerful, and it's basically come to us, to the Democratic establishment, come to us, you know,
right.
We want to win this election.
And I think that's absolutely, but it's also the wealthiest of the wealthy.
I know.
That how do we speak to them, you know, both, you know, through consciousness and also maybe literally inviting them back, because they seem very disconnected sociopaths. So that's been coming up for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
How do we speak to them without, you know, how do we not hate them, right? As they continue.
No, I think it's a big challenge. If we identify that some of these people are psychopaths and sociopaths, it gets very challenging, because the whole point is that they don't integrate with the rest of us. They are unable. So
it's 4% of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's 4% of humanity is psychopath or sociopath, unfortunately.
Wow.
So it's very interesting.
Because they're sociopaths.
What was that?
I said, how did they become in charge? How did that happen? But I think it happens to them as they rise up. They have to just be.
They super select. Unfortunately, they super select.
So there is a fascinating book that we've been reading, and it's called The Sociopath Next Door. Highly recommend it.
Does it have something to do with what we're talking about, like the leaders, our leaders?
Yeah.
Well,
and how people super select. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and we're all about it, you know, social work is so much about intervention. And, you know, even when, you know, with my teenage daughter, when she was a teenager, it's like, oh, I need a mom intervention. You know, like, how do we intervene lovingly to
So the woman who wrote that book, her second book is coming out in a few weeks, and it is about how to deal with that. And I can't wait to read it.
What's the author's name?
I can't remember her name, but I can tell you in a second.
What's the name of the book, though?
This is Sociopath Next Door.
And Jackie,
Huh?
as you know, as Derek knows probably more deeply than any of us, this opportunity to not return to the normal of global corporate capitalism, the reason why I'm putting virtually all my energy into Romero right now is what they have created as the prologue and then the 500 page. So you can get a 48 page. It is really profound for changing the way we govern ourselves in California. And the whole idea is to not have corporate capture of any part of society. And we can do it in California, and we can lead the way, because how did these guys get to where they are? They are riding on this consciousness, this system of global corporate capitalism. And they don't know what to friggin' do right now. They're doing all kinds of things that they're going to take advantage of it. That's what they do.
Yeah.
I had a poem which I'll send you that came out about 4 days ago that surprised the heck out of me, and I'll send it to you. It's a simple 1 page, but it has to do with the feminine principle and with the elite. Just it surprised the heck out of me. It's just giving me courage and faith in this moment in history. Chat, you know what? I don't know how to access the rest of my computer. Wait, did I just do it? What did I do? Am I gone?
Able to shrink your
We
Zoom
put the name
on.
of the book and the woman in the chat.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Did you get it, Jackie?
I'm trying to see. Let me, in fact, I have it right here.
Oh, got it.
Thank you. Hold on.
And her second book is coming out.
Okay, beautiful. I've always liked Ann Wilson Schaaf too. So Ann Wilson Schaaf, Society is an Addict, you know, and I see that pretty, for me, it follows really well that that they are the addicts, you know, and that we have learned and we have been encouraged to be complacent and go along with and not speak out. And certainly, you know, folks like us there's always been people that have spoken out, but what happens to those people, you know, that are you know, talking about the violence in the home and all that. Her work's really good. And I think it's all these things together, like addiction, like they're completely addicted to the way they do things.
Yeah.
And even though they know now, like, it might be children. I mean, I think some of them must know as they're younger and moving up the ladder in these corporations that my children are going to be affected by this. You know, there's still a ton of denial. But what's interesting is I've been kind of trying to focus the last X amount of years, again, like I said, on my fellows. And then after this whole Bernie thing debacle, I was just like, oh my God, everyone's voting for Biden. Holy hell.
Okay,
So
can I just read it to you because I can't figure out how to copy it on? Okay, 4/5/20. There's something stirring in my inner being. What is it? Frothing at the mouths of the hungry and the ill waiting to die comes a wave of assurance so strong that it capsizes the ship of state, drowning the clownish wicked king. In its place rises a feminist vice president / president who shall govern with such adroitness that even the dense fetid cultists of the former king have little bad to say about her in short time. This, along with such devastation of the human population, happens so fast that the majority do not understand that they are being prepared for yet a greater deluge, that of rising oceans and fierce fires that descend like a greater still pandemic plague across the oceans. Nothing is divided from everything. All comes together or perishes in this moment of the ultimate storm. Those who have practiced living the eye of the storm with patience and kindness and inner serenity and love are those who manage to fulfill the will of the feminine governor of chaos into order. A new order in the world that is not corporate, but public and in alignment with nature. Such a shock to the system of the old world, taken by surprise with such overwhelming, dare I say, love, that there is no real defense in the face of such terrible consequences of kingly neglect. Thus, a new era of global leadership arises locally across the globe, giving humanity a fighting chance to implement indigenous wisdom, with new technology and old-fashioned hard work and solidarity.
Nice. You're still going to send it to us, right?
Oh, I can send it to you. Yeah, if
Yes,
you
please.
want it.
Yes,
Yeah,
Okay.
please,
just send out an email.
to
Okay.
everyone. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. All right.
Be well, my friends.
Be well. Thank you, Derek.
Be well.
Bye.
Love you all.
Good
It's
to
great
see
to
you,
see you guys.
Marcos, and thank you so much, Jackie, for Jake's work.
Oh,
Yeah.
love it.
All righty.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.